For over a decade, one single standard stood as the guardian of our entire wireless world. It definitely wasn't the first, and it won't be the last, but you could argue that WPA2 was the single most important security leap in the history of Wi-Fi. So today, let's dive into the AES revolution that finally made wireless trustworthy.
All right, just so you know, this is part 8 of a series that's based on a really detailed report on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth standards. That report comes from the RFI detectives who are part of Virtualization Options LLC.
Nowadays, we just assume our Wi-Fi is secure, right? But for anyone who was managing networks back in the early 2000s, we remember a time when that was not a given. At all. Honestly, the early days of Wi-Fi were a complete and total security nightmare.
So, before we can really appreciate the fortress that WPA2 eventually built, we have to look back at the cracked, broken armor that came before it. This was literally the Wild West of wireless networking.
This one sentence, right here, it just perfectly captures the story of early Wi-Fi security. It wasn't some proactive, planned evolution. No, it was more like a frantic, reactive scramble to plug massive holes as hackers found and exploited them one after another.
And here's the proof. Look at WEP. It used RC4 encryption, which was okay, but with fatally flawed static keys. And its data integrity check, a thing called CRC32, that was so weak an attacker could literally change the data mid-flight and the system would have no idea. So then came WPA, which was supposed to be a stopgap fix. It patched things up with something called TKIP, but it was still built on that same shaky RC4 foundation. It was better for sure, but everybody knew it was just buying time.
And that brings us to the main event. This wasn't just another patch. This was a complete and total overhaul, a fundamental rethinking of wireless security from the ground up. This was the AES revolution.
So, the really important thing to get here is that this revolution actually started with a formal plan. The IEEE, that's the engineering body that defines all these standards, created 802.11i. Think of it like the technical blueprint, the constitution for a new, secure wireless age. And it was ratified back in 2004.
But let's be real. Nobody goes to the store looking for an 802.1i compliant router, right? So the Wi-Fi Alliance created WPA2. This was the brand name, the certification sticker you saw on the box that guaranteed it met all the tough security requirements of that new standard. So if 802.1i was the law, WPA2 was the seal of approval.
So what made WPA2 so revolutionary? Well, it all boiled down to one three-letter acronym, AES. The move from the old RC4 to the advanced encryption standard wasn't just some minor upgrade. It was like trading in a flimsy bicycle lock for a massive bank vault. AES was and still is a globally trusted government-grade encryption algorithm, a total game changer.
Okay, so let's pop the hood and look inside this fortress at the actual components that made it so incredibly effective. For all the IT pros watching, this is where the real magic happens.
At the absolute heart of WPA2 is AES, and it was implemented through a protocol called CCMP. The way to think about it is, AES is the unbreakable steel of the vault door, and CCMP is the complex locking mechanism that operates it, providing a whole suite of security services. In these two core services, they directly fix those old, nagging problems. First, confidentiality. By using AES, it made the data completely unreadable to anyone trying to snoop on your network. But just as important was integrity. CCMP used a powerful cryptographic checksum that makes sure data wasn't secretly altered while it was flying through the air. For the first time in Wi-Fi history, we had both secrecy and authenticity.
Okay, but how do you get the keys to the vault without an attacker snatching them out of the air? Well, that's the job of the four-way handshake. It's this clever, four-step negotiation that lets a device and an access point securely agree on a brand new encryption key. This completely fixed the fatal flaw of WEP's old static keys. With WPA2, you get a fresh, strong, unique key for every single session, every single time you connect.
So, this new standard was strong, it was comprehensive, and it was really well designed. And all that strength led to something pretty remarkable in the fast-moving world of tech: longevity. For more than 14 years, WPA2 was the gold standard. Just stop and think about that for a second. In an industry where a new standard can be obsolete in 18 months, WPA2 just reigned as the dominant trusted security protocol for well over a decade.
WPA2's dominance spanned entire generations of Wi-Fi. I mean, it was there for 802.11g, it became the default security for the higher speeds of Wi-Fi 4, and it stayed the dominant force through the entire gigabit era of Wi-Fi 5. It was the stable, secure foundation that really enabled the smartphone revolution and the explosion of all the connected devices we rely on today.
So here's the main takeaway. WPA2 wasn't just another incremental update. It was the essential standard. It was the bedrock that finally allowed businesses, governments, and all of us to truly trust wireless technology, paving the way for the connected world we all live in today.
The legacy of WPA2 is just undeniable. It solved the huge problems of its time, and it secured an entire generation of technology. But as we look ahead to new threats, things like the rise of quantum computing that could just shatter today's encryption, it leaves us with a really critical question. What does the next AES revolution look like? And are we going to be ready for it?